Hi, I'm Joshua Finn from J&H Aerospace, and this is the build video for the new J&H Aerospace Mini Cat's Meow. This is a standard class catapult glider to replace our existing Protege Light, which has a balsa and carbon composite fuselage, and we are switching over to a full carbon fuselage, among other things, making some structural improvements and the like, which will improve the performance of the model. So with that, let's talk about what all is going to be in your kit and some tooling that you'll need to build it correctly. There are several tools that you will need to complete this build, some of them optional. I recommend CA glue for the construction. Some of you will be more comfortable with other glue types. The foam that is used in this kit works well with typical Gorilla or Mercury or Bob Smith CA, or Zap for that matter. I recommend Bob Smith CA Accelerator. Mercury also sells a brand of accelerator that is very good. You will need a sanding block of some sort. This is the one that we sell at jhaerospace.com, and it is sandpaper on both sides, smooth on the edges so that it works well for finishing these gliders. You'll need a razor blade of some sort to cut some of the parts out and clean them up a little bit. You can use a single edge razor blade, or this is a split in half and snapped to a point carbon steel double edge razor blade. They don't technically make these anymore, but there's lots of stock out there of these, so you can find them online. And once you start using them, you'll probably be addicted to them because they're very, very good. You'll need a razor plane of some sort, or at least I recommend one. You can build this airplane without a razor plane. However, I like to use one to get consistent leading edge shapes and some of the tapers. This is a fairly high-end razor plane from Bruce Kimball in Washington State. Bruce is a Boeing engineer, so he does not do this work full-time. But if you contact me through jhaerospace.com, I can direct you to Bruce. I don't post his email address out on the web since that's his personal account. But if you contact me, I can tell you how to get these from Bruce. Alternatively, if you're willing to hone it a little bit, the Stanley mini planes work well. Also, the David plane is a very well-known tool that works quite well. However, you'll have to use like 600 grit sandpaper to to polish the bottom surface, because there's some kind of rough machining on those from the factory, whereas this comes to you beautifully smoothed. The Stanley planes actually have a very smooth bottom as well. And one other thing that I like to use, you don't have to have it, but kind of helps with some of the balancing. This is the glider balancer that we sell, designed by Stephen Wrigley, and it just lets you be able to set your airplane on there, and sliding it back and forth a little bit. We'll keep moving around. This one's got a little bit of a lip there, but that's right where the CG is. Lets you get that location very quickly and very precisely. Okay. Let's start by popping your wings out. And go ahead and separate this wing from the dihedral gauge. There are 3 dihedral gauges supplied because there are 3 wing sheets. So once you, so you'll need 2 dihedral gauges total. So make sure that you get the get another one out when we get to that step. Now, things that are important to note is, due to how things are glued in here, you're going to want to make sure that all of the laser burrs are cleared off of the trailing edge of the wing. And also in this notch here, there's one. And so you want that one cleaned out. Don't sand this area excessively because this is a precision fit for your wingtip. So just get that burr out. Same story on the other wing. And at the moment, that's the only part of the wing that we're really concerned about sanding. And we're going to set the two wings here like so. And then we will pop out the wingtips, which are these pieces. And these should pop out on their own. But take your time, make sure nothing gets torn or anything of that nature. And then sand this straight edge. And then the other straight edge, just give a little bit of sanding to it. Same on this one. And those are the only parts that we're concerned about. Again, the leading edge can be dealt with in a little bit. So these parts are going to go together like so. And you'll notice this wing panel is thicker than the wingtip. So there is an edge here, and we're going to sand that off. We're also going to do the same thing along the back of the wing. And then we're going to match the other wing to it. So you want to have a mirrored setup like this, and then we'll put the flaps in after these have been shaped. Then we'll flip the wings over and shape the top surface of the wing. So what I'm going to do is get my CA glue out, and since there's no minimum weight in Catapult Glider, you may want to consider carefully what glue you use. CA can add a lot of weight if you're not careful. Duco cement or something of that nature is considerably lighter, and IndoorFFSupply.com actually has a new glue that works very well for these types of applications. But what I'm doing is I'm just running the lightest little bead of glue along here I possibly can. And I'm actually going to wipe some of the excess off of that with my finger. And then we're going to lay this panel flat. And we're going to slide the wingtip in there. Make sure it's all the way down against the bottom surface there. Mine's kind of sticking up a little bit. There we go. And so we check on the top, everything is flush, and we're going to lay this back down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we are making two mirrored wings so I don't end up with two left wings or two right wings. And again, I'm trying to take out any excess glue that I can. And there we go. So those are now together. We're going to slide our tail surfaces out of the way for the time being. And now is when we can take a razor plane in. And what we want to do is taper this wing from all the way in here. We're going to gradually taper it to the same thickness as the wingtip. So I'm going to make my first pass about here. And then I'm going to make another pass from closer in. You want to be very careful pressing down on this wingtip because it can tear because that wood is very, very thin and lightweight. We've got enough we can safely make one more pass. And this is the one where you want to be careful. If in doubt, just wait and do it with sandpaper. And there we go. So this is actually now down to the almost exactly the same thickness. I'm going to do the same thing up front. That one was a little bit finicky there. Now at this point, you may want to even try to taper down the thickness. Make sure you don't have any grit. I felt some trash get caught in there. If you get a piece of trash on here and it gets dragged along with the sandpaper, it leaves gouges in your wood. So what I'm going to do is I'm already going to go ahead and sand this. There will be a couple of sanding steps that will be involved here. And then we're going to try and get the outer part to taper down a little bit as well. Now if you notice, I'm only sanding out like that. I'm not coming back because I don't want to risk tearing this wood. If you have an electronic scale, now is a good time to start weighing the wing so that you can determine how much wood you're taking off. And if you have access to a popular set of plans for about a Category 2 indoor glider, you can use that as to set some of your weight goals for this airplane. So we'll go ahead, and before I shape this trailing section of that center of that wing panel, I'm going to go ahead and finish the other wing so that we make sure we're making matched sets. Didn't get quite as much off of there. There we go. That's better. And now we'll repeat the same process over here. Now, one thing that's very important is I'm not pressing down hard. I'm just running this around very lightly. If you press down hard, you compress the wood, and so you weaken it without taking enough wood off. This one I still need to sand a little bit more off of. There we go. Next step is that we're going to put a taper on this rear section, and I'm again going to use my razor plane to do that. If you notice, I kind of tapered that out right here because my thickness is about right here. I just want to remove wood from the intersection. I'm going to make one more pass right here, except nope, it was stubborn. It did not take it off right here. There we go. So what we were doing is we were working on the bottom surface of the wing, and our flap is thinner than this wood, so we want to taper smoothly into that so we don't have any excess material, so we have a streamlined shape. In general, we're just trying to get rid of material any place we can to get the airplane lighter. I'm going to run on this wing. I'm going to run towards the root rather than how I did it before. And there we go. Let's take our flap set, and what we're going to do is we're going to go around where all these laser tabs are, and we're going to cut on the inside of them so that the flaps have a smooth edge. Like that. A little bit right there. Now those are the ones that are important in terms of gluing this flap in. These here you want to shorten just to make sure that you stay under the 3-inch chord limit that the AMA imposes for standard class catapult glider. So if you'll notice, I'm cutting on both sides to remove those. And this airplane should have no trouble coming in under the chord limit, but that's just one extra little way to make sure it does. Now, I left a little bit extra on this one right here, so I'm just coming in to trim that off. I know that sound may look a little ridiculous, but the less gap there is in the joint between the wing and the flaps, the better. It lets you use less glue and get better contact. Now what we're going to do is we're going to install a flap on this side first. Got a little bit of stringiness there. Try to get some of the dust out of here so it doesn't get back in our glue line and add unnecessary weight. Now, so I'm putting just a very, very thin bead of glue. Now we want to lay this down flat. We want our flap also flat against our build surface. Now I've got a little bit of a gap out here. I don't know quite why. I must have not glued something in straight on the wingtip, and so I've got that little bit of a gap. Now, one thing that you'll find is that the foam has a tendency, for whatever reason, to retard the hardening process of your CA glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip a little bit of accelerator into this glue joint. Now it's important that you dip this on and don't spray it, because the accelerator will soften the foam and cause it to deform. And in extreme cases, this can render your airplane completely unflyable. And by extreme cases, I mean any case involving you spraying the accelerator onto the foam. Now we're just inspecting that it's fully bonded along the entire length, and that looks good. We're going to set this down so that we make sure that we are mirroring everything. If you can't tell, this one, for whatever reason, laid out much smoother than the other side. And there we go. Now go ahead and smooth off any excess glue along this join. So we're not pressing down or anything because we don't want to sand this foam. We just want to remove any burrs that have formed along here, because a lot of times you'll get some roughness here. I actually feel a little bit right here. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to flip these over, and we're going to shape the leading edge. And we're not going to come up with some sort of curved airfoil, we're just going to bevel this leading edge. The answer to why is best directed at the European low ceiling glider crowd, because they know the answer and the rest of us don't. All we know is it works. And we're being stubborn. So you can see I've only beveled off just this little bit here. We'll sand in a little bit of a bevel here, but we want this almost to be a sharp edge. Now, ideally, you would lay this on the edge of the table, but if I do that, you can't see what I'm doing. So now you can see I have both of these beveled all the way around out to the tips. The next thing you'll want to do is set these for the dihedral. So we're going to angle it up about that angle right there. You could actually go ahead and break out the dihedral gauges at this time, set it up, and sand against the edge of the table. The bottom line is I want just a little bit of a bevel here along that entire surface. So I've taken all of the laser burn off. That way I know I've gotten all the way to the bottom edge of that surface. Because we want a good solid glue joint that doesn't require a whole lot of glue to fill any gaps or anything. Now we'll go ahead and pop out one of these dihedral gauges. And the little part with the hole over here forms the base of it. And I'll grab another set over here. These just fit into the little base like so. Just putting a little bit of weight there to hold that wing panel down so that I can maneuver this other one without disturbing it quite as easily. And now I'm glued to a dihedral gauge. There we go. Well, I hope I had it right. Let's find out. Yep, that slides in and out freely, so we're good. We'll sand just a little bit of a flat right there. Now, before we start assembling this wing onto the pylon and whatnot, we're going to go ahead and make some cuts in the wing, and you can do this with scissors or razor blade. This is the razor blade I want. I'm actually going to use my sanding block as a straight edge here. So I'm going to go to the apex of that little corner, get this roughly parallel. I mean, you can take the time to line it up. I'm just going to eyeball it here. I'm going to come in about 1/4 inch from the flap wing join, and I'm going to make a cut. And then I'm going to slide this over about 1/32 of an inch, and I'm going to make a second cut parallel to that. What this does is it separates the flap from the rest of the wing. Just like that. So now I can bend this down, and then I can bend my tip separately to provide launch trim. So the flaps provide us with some glide trim, the tips provide us with launch trim. And the important thing to remember is that launch trim on the tips works the reverse of what you would expect it to. There you go. And at this point we can actually rub this flap on the edge of the table here, just like this. You need a fairly sharp corner to get this to work, but that causes your flap to gain some curvature. I'll show you again on this other one in just a second. So there you go. Have some curvature on both sides. And it doesn't take a whole lot. You can kind of influence a little more in various ways by getting it to kind of buckle like that. What we're going to do next is we're going to cut off the pylon. You will want to free this with the razor blade the way I did, because since the grain is running across, this part is very fragile until it is mounted. And so you can give that a light sanding to take away any laser burrs on it. And if you wanted to, you could taper this thing a little bit if you're real careful. I'm not going to, though. I don't think you save a whole lot of weight doing that. We're going to run glue down this guy. We want to center the back of it on the dihedral join, and then just come along onto the front and do the same. And get it as close to straight up and down as possible. Then any fine-tuning of that can be adjusted when you mount it to the fuselage. So now your wing is mounted up. Let's take a fuselage here. I'm going to use my other sanding block so I don't get carbon dust all over that, and then I get it into the flying surfaces later. But we're going to sand this fuselage a little bit. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. And the thing's getting hot.
And carbon fiber splinters suck.
Yeah. Alright, fine. Let's try this. Normally I don't have this problem, but today I do. And what I am doing is I am turning this as I go in and out to try to get all edges of it. Now I'm not really concerned about the front half because I do need a little bit of weight up front. Now if you're trying to launch to a high Cat 2 ceiling, like Kent State Fieldhouse in Ohio, which is about 60 feet, I wouldn't do a whole lot of sanding on the fuselage. Definitely not this much. I'm going to sand off the front as well, just to take the gloss off so it's easier to glue to. I'm going to get a napkin and try to wipe some of that up. So there's our fuselage all neatly sanded out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 4 7/8 inch back from the leading edge, or from the nose end, the thick end. And that's where I'm going to put my wing. So now I'm going to flip this wing over. I'm going to run a bead of glue and our goal is to just line it up on that pylon front to back. If you'll notice, I've already gotten carbon dust all in my wing and stuff. There we go. So now we're going to move on to the tail surfaces. Make sure these two little notches are free. And we'll go ahead and pop the vertical tail out as well. I want to clean this up a little bit. Now within reason, your vertical tail can be as thin as you are comfortable going. So if you can see through it, all the better. I do want to taper it from some degree of thickness at the root to almost nothing out at the tip. Almost there. Next, we're going to go to our horizontal tail. I do kind of like to try to have a little bit of an airfoil to this. So the thing that I want to point out is I'm right-handed, so I'm going to want to put my rudder on the right-hand side of my horizontal tail so that I can bend in right rudder. This set of notches is offset, and if you look at the way I've got it here, they are closer to that side. So the center line of this vertical tail, or horizontal tail, is right there. You can tell that because the notch is a little bit longer on this side than on this side. So I'm going to use this as the top because this is going to be the right panel. I want the rudder on the right side of that, on the right side of my stab, so I can run my fuselage off to the left of my fin. And so at this point, I am looking to sand this down pretty thin. You don't want to go so thin that it flutters on the way up, but you can go quite thin before that becomes an issue. Now let's take our CA glue and just gently, just a tiny little bit of bead of glue down here. Get any excess off that you can. And there you go. Now, we're going to want to leave a little bit of the horizontal tail, or sorry, of the rear of the fuselage sticking out the back. So, going to mark like about that much, enough that you can grip it up to about there. You could actually tape that off to know how much, how long to make your glue line. Put a little on the side, but not much. I'm trying to get some of the excess glue off. Now the thing that we want to do as we're pressing this down is keep our wings level as best as we can. You can actually block up your one of your dihedral gauges to do that. You don't want any stab tilt because flapped gliders do not respond well to stab tilt. And there we go. We'll hit that with some CA accelerator just to make sure it's not going to rotate on us. And there we go. You can see I don't have any stab tilt at all. Now let's do one last thing on the back, which is, let's see, where did I put that part sheet? Right in front of me. This is not necessary, but some of you will find it useful. There is a little trapezoidal piece right here that you can take out, and I'll sand it a little bit because I want it thinner than it is. You can glue that piece right back here to give yourself a little bit more of a grip at the back. Some of you will not find that necessary. I usually don't need it, but it does make the airplane easier to grip if your hands are sweaty or if you don't have a whole lot of hand strength. Particularly younger flyers tend to find this necessary because they can't grip onto the carbon quite as easily. There we go. Now it's attached. Now let's move up front. So we're going to take this part out, which is the core for our nose. You want to be very careful cutting this out, because it is quite fragile until it's assembled. And then we'll cut out the two matching pieces. And what we'll do is we will go ahead and glue one of those to the nose section here. And then we'll glue the other one to the other side. And now let's sand this guy down a little bit. And back here in the hook area, you can kind of round this off a little bit. And I broke a piece off. Now we will squirt some glue in the hole on that. We're going to slide it right onto the end of the nose. And we want to try to get that straight up and down. Like so. And there we go. At this point, let's go ahead and look at our center of gravity. So the airplane is balancing. We'll show you this way. It's balancing back out over the flaps. So that means we can add some nose weight to this model. Now, this is where I'm going to mention one thing that you can do is you can sand a flat in the front of this airplane. This is if you need nose weight. You can add some nose weight in a functional manner. So included in your kit should be a couple of these earplugs. And what you want to do is just snip on the rounded end, just snip a little bit of that off. And we're going to glue that to the front of our nose as a shock absorber so that our nose weight accomplishes more than one thing. So now let's check where our CG is ending up. Okay, and we're still going to need a little bit of clay because we're balancing right over here, and we want our CG all the way up at the trailing edge of the wing itself. So let's take out some of our clay. Should not take a whole lot. Often you will have to put a dab of glue on here to get the clay to stick. So generally just glue it on so you're certain of that. And now we are balancing right there on the trailing edge of the wing where we want to be. So that's got the airplane finished. The last thing that you want to do is make a catapult. So I'm going to trim off a loop of rubber that's about 3 to 4 inches. You don't want it to be very long or it can snap up and catch the glider. So what I'm doing is just tying a regular old granny knot, bring it up there. Then take your catapult handle, and what we're going to do is we're going to loop this around and pull it through just like that. And sometimes these will tend to come loose, so you put a little dab of glue on there. It just secures the rubber band on there. Okay, so with that, your your mini cat's Meow is finished, balanced, and ready to fly. So now we're going to do some test glides with this airplane. I'll direct you to a trimming video on doing the bulk of the flying with this model. However, this will get you started so that you're in basic flight trim. So at the moment we want to check and make sure that the airplane is nice and straight. If there's any twist in the wing, we want it to be in this direction on the right side, so some left aileron and maybe some right rudder. And I don't have any right rudder, so I'm going to start to tease a little bit in here because I'm going to need to establish a right turn. Try to avoid splitting the wood like I just did. And you can use the edge of a table to kind of curve it around as well. But generally these do take a fair amount of right rudder to get a good launch profile. Alright, so we're seeing a little bit of a stall there. So I'm going to add some clay to remedy the stall. We're going to start off with just a tiny amount. I'll set the rest over here. So now we're going to look and see what it does. And that is perfect. Okay, so we saw that the airplane had very flat glide and gradual right-hand turn. So the next thing we want to do is we want to do a little higher speed of a test. So what I want to do at this point is I want to hold the airplane under the pylon, pick a point on the opposite wall that is pretty much eye level, and I want to throw at that. So I'm going to throw fairly hard. And we see that the airplane pitched up very significantly. So let's try to remedy that. Because we don't want the airplane to pitch up too much. We want it to run fairly level. So I'm going to go, in this case, since I'm turning to the right, I'm going to go over to the right hand side of the horizontal stab. I'm going to bend some down elevator like that. And you can actually breathe on it, and the humidity will help it to take a set a little better. So you can see I've got just a tiny amount of curvature right here. Maybe you can see it this way as well, just a little bit. And we'll increase that as needed. So now, do the same thing. We'll see the airplane pitches up, but not quite as much. There we go. That's what you want to see. Now, this airplane at the moment is performing very nicely in that it is not rolling in to the right. So typically when you build one of these right off the board, and I must have gotten just a little bit of twist in this wing, which in this case is a good thing. But typically when you add in rudder to get that turn to come around, the airplane will start to crank in like this. And so the solution in that case is to take the wing, and you don't want to mess with the flap, only the wing, and you will twist it like that. And you want your twist to be in here. And if you start hearing cracking in the wood, that's okay. A lot of people panic. They don't want to risk damaging the airplane in doing that. But if the airplane is rolling in, you have to be willing to crack it and break it a little bit to get it to not roll over like that. On the other hand, if you run into a scenario where the airplane's not turning enough, keep cranking in some opposite rudder, or sorry, some right rudder, and adjust as needed. Like I said, there's a video, there are a couple of videos I'll put in the comments section, in the description, where you can see what to do to get the airplane trimmed. So there are a couple different examples so you can see different problems that I've solved. So what I'll do is I'll direct you to the Protege Light trimming video, as well as one of the Protege Science Olympiad trimming videos. And those airplanes are a little more critical to trim actually than this one because they fly faster. So that'll give you some good examples. But that pretty much concludes the build and basic flying for the Mini Cat's Meow from J&H Aerospace. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you'll check this airplane out and show up to a contest and fly some standard class catapult glider with us. See ya. Hi, I'm Josh Finn. This is Hope. We are J&H Aerospace.
If you like this video, hit the like button.
Also, how about subscribe to our channel and check out jhaerospace.com for new free flight products and all of the tooling that you'll need to build them.
Thanks for watching.